Good evening, Edward Grieve again. Welcome to this special edition of the 7:30 report, brought about by industrial action by members of the Public Sector Union. On the program tonight, we report on becoming a republic. How would we? Do we want to? In the Philippines, we look at the way one village is trying to cope with the devastation of volcanic eruption, and from London, how computer technology can create virtual reality.
Your hand. Good God, I can feel your hand. I can feel it. That's amazing. Let me try this again. Let's shake hands. Chris? Oh, I'm shaking hands with an animated figure in virtual reality.
But first to West Australia and an extraordinary story from Perth. The tale of a social worker who became a millionaire businesswoman. Robyn Greenberg was a financial advisor who gained the trust of hundreds of West Australian women. Her plan? To open a building society run by women for women. It was to be the start of a national empire of feminist-inspired investment. It began in Perth, and on the outside, her business Western Women ran efficiently, amassing deposits in the millions. Eventually, the empire collapsed. A closer look at the books revealed massive debt, liabilities of more than $9 million. Those depositors are now out of pocket, with a real possibility they will never see their hard-earned savings again. The woman behind the scam is now missing, on the run from police and officials. Melanie Ambrose reports.
And our stand is no more victims. Change the system.
Her favourite words are victim and survivor. She professes to be both. In her own words, an incest survivor, a victim of domestic violence, a taker of Valium, doesn't read books on management. Instead, on her desk is the Old Testament.
Hello, Val. How's the day going, kid?
Perfect. How are you going?
I'm travelling well.
Her name, or one of them, Robyn Zara Greenberg. Under a glaring media spotlight, she brought an unconventional scheme to the West, a financial management and lending service for women by women. She called it Western Women. And her qualifications?
None.
Hello. Today has been very good.
No qualifications, and even more surprising, she'd been twice bankrupt. But that didn't stop hundreds of women putting money into the hands of Robyn Zara Greenberg.
Before I invested, I was given a lot of packages and things on Western Women, and I read them and I thought, this is women doing something for, important. So, and I trust, women, you trust other women.
An innocent bond of trust that's been broken. Robyn Greenberg, the lover of limelight, is now lying low. She's missing, along with $2 million in depositors' funds.
We don't know where she is. We have no reason to think that she's out of the state, but obviously she might be.
This is one of the last interviews Robyn Greenberg gave before going to ground. In it, she claims she's under siege.
There's been frenzy. Kill material.
And she didn't like claims that she'd pocketed depositors' funds.
That's bullshit. I operate a loan account.
What ensued was more like a Hollywood movie plot. Western Women documents found in bizarre circumstances. Some burnt, some even found in plastic bags floating in the Swan River.
I think it's fascinating. I mean, I have a paper shredder in my office. If I ever wanted to get rid of anything, don't you think that I'd use a shredder?
We have all lost this money. I feel sad, and I'm sure you all do.
Greenberg's once faithful followers have turned against her, rallying together to try to recoup their money, sums as large as $750,000.
Sick in the stomach, I only lost a small amount of money, and I felt sick. I thought, this isn't right. You've worked hard for that money. You don't expect someone to just fold and disappear. And there's other people who've lost $170,000, their entire superannuation packages. How do they feel? Hi, Karen, it's Carrie. I've just finished speaking to that lady who could verify the early links with Wire, and I've found a few more names for us to investigate.
As Carrie Smith continues the chase for her $20,000, her daily job has switched from suburban housewife to private investigator. She says it's become an obsession.
I've come across some quite interesting stuff that if it's so easy for me to get the information out, how come others didn't do it before me?
Carrie Smith says she's found evidence to suggest strong links between Robin Greenberg's company Western Women and the government of Western Australia. One of them stemming from this, a government-run seminar for women, which covered many topics, not all financial. But Carrie Smith says her investigations show that every single woman whose name was on the official list to attend the meeting was later contacted by Robin Greenberg's band of followers.
What do you have to say about the fact that they had access to those names?
It's disgusting. If you choose to go to a seminar, you shouldn't be publicly listed as fair game for a financial corporation.
She put it around that the government was supporting her, and she certainly harassed people by telephone and by letter to invest with her. There's no other word for it. She harassed them.
Greenberg's largest number of clients were obtained here, at WIRE, the Women's Information and Referral Exchange Centre. It's designed to help women in crisis, and when someone asked for financial help, they were directed to Robin Greenberg's representatives, the only financial group allowed by the government to set up here.
Western Women were permitted to hold consultations in the WIRE building once a week, and that women who had contacted WIRE were referred to those sessions.
I didn't start this to do WIRE bashing, and the more I dig up, the more I feel really sad that this has happened to WIRE. I'm no lawyer, but imagine me, it's like me giving legal advice at WIRE.
That decision was made by the WIRE management group. It was very carefully considered, Melanie, at the time.
Would you call Robin Greenberg an experienced financial advisor?
Well, I'd have to say that if she came to me as someone who had been the social worker at Royal Perth Hospital with a curriculum vitae that she had, that I'd be tempted certainly to consider her as one of the applicants.
As for the woman with long red nails and short red hair, who never even kept such basic material as a cash book, where she is anybody's guess. Reported sightings range from a suburban shopping centre to a commune in the southwest of the state. Another rumour is that she has returned to Israel. Although it's believed Greenberg doesn't have a passport in her present name, she has other aliases, including Robin Sarah Greenberg and Robin Braden.
We know 6 or 7 names. Whether that's all of them, we don't know.
Right now, state and federal police, along with the Australian Securities Commission, are working on further charges relating to the financial management of Western Women. At the same time, liquidators appointed to inquire into the collapse of the company are working on another bankruptcy action against Greenberg. The former Israeli social worker who turned millionaire businesswoman seems to strive in turmoil. It's how she'd want it. Greenberg given the final word.
So maybe it's times of adversity women come through.
If ever a country didn't deserve another natural disaster, it would have to be the Philippines. Already rocked by earthquakes and lashed by typhoons, last week's eruption of Mount Pinatubo was a doubly cruel blow. Not only have thousands of square kilometres been devastated, the fragile economy will be severely strained if the Americans decide to withdraw from their badly damaged bases. But as Philip Williams reports, while the US forces have somewhere else to go, for the people living in the shadow of Pinatubo, it's a calamity which will affect them for years, and there's no escape.
For the village children, the eruption was a game. Their models, shaped from the volcanic debris, blasted out of a mountain 40 kilometres away. How do you explain why black clouds turn day to night, dumping millions of tons of rock and sand on everything and everyone? Why more than 200 people died in a tangle of crushed homes. And how a green and fertile world suddenly resembled a desert. These kids here are from the village of Pinalot, and it's very typical of the sort of suffering that's going on in this area. Now, while there's no starvation or anything at the moment, this is the long-term problem. You see, out there should be nice green fields growing crops. And of course, with all the ash, with about that much ash on top of everything, nothing at all is growing, and the future is very uncertain for these people. A healthy rice crop is gone. In its place, a barren harvest of sand. Virtually nothing left to eat for the animals, and the lifeblood waterways choked with sludge.
They're also very scared. They hope that it doesn't happen again. They don't think they can take any more of this.
This is all that's left of Alice Pangan's house, crushed under the weight of the fallout. Her family has no home, and their crops are ruined. About the only thing left standing after Pinatubo is her spirit.
She doesn't give up hope, but she knows it's going to be very difficult because she has 5 children.
Even at the best of times, life has never been easy in places like this. Now a cruel freak of geology has robbed them of simple subsistence, their livelihoods literally smothered in a moonscape of debris. Of course, we've had our own fair share of natural disasters in Australia, but I've never seen anything like this before. The whole landscape is totally changed. Now, the people here have suffered just about everything they've been through. Earthquakes, they've been through mudslides, and of course the volcano. They must be wondering what the hell they've done to deserve it all.
If we were to make a biblical allusion to Job, we're probably chosen by God, actually, being tested so that out of this crucible will emerge an even stronger nation.
You're confident of that?
I am confident of it.
That faith will be severely tested here at Olongapo. The city of 250,000 used to pride itself as the greenest and the cleanest in the Philippines. Now it looks more like a gigantic demolition yard. Like most buildings, the roof on this warehouse simply couldn't hold the tons of wet sand. The twisted beams, never designed to withstand volcanoes. Elsewhere, there's barely a roof intact. Vehicles are buried and broken, and trees stripped bare by the weight.
We've lost 45 people. 2,000 people have been injured. We have lost our hospital, which services 200 beds and services the entire province. We have lost our schools. 95% of our schools are down. We won't be having class here for the next 3 months at least. We have no power. We have no water. Our people are hungry, and we lost our homes. I still can't believe it. I'm hurt, and the hurt is sister.
How long is it?
I'm sorry, I can't. It's hard.
Every day, tens of thousands depend on handouts for survival. At this one centre alone, the cooks have slaved for hours feeding 18,000 people. Just across the road, volunteers are preparing emergency rations for distribution throughout the province. It'll be this way for weeks, because for most, there's just nowhere else to go. It's a very different story at the adjacent American Subic Bay Naval Base. Here, 20,000 wives, children, even pets were evacuated by ship, leaving behind collapsed hangars and planes upended by the weight of the ash. At the nearby US Clark Air Base, the runway looks more like a beach. There are hot mud flows just outside the base perimeter. Inside, more crushed hangars, and all the while, nearby Pinatubo, ominously belching ash. The leases on both bases were being negotiated, all of which may now be irrelevant if the Americans decide it's not worth the massive repair job ahead. It's a disaster the Philippines could do without, a nation that has suffered one natural calamity after another. This time, the very landscape has been altered. whole regions devastated. And there is every chance it can happen all over again.
Philip Williams from the Philippines. And now the Republic of Australia. Do we need it? Do we want it? In Hobart this week, the ALP decided that we certainly need it and that the government should start a 10-year campaign to persuade us that we want it. If the Labor Party gets its way, we'll be declared a republic on January the 1st, 2001. With us tonight are two people with differing views on the concept. John Howard is the former leader of the Liberal Party and now the Shadow Minister for Industrial Relations. And Associate Professor George Winterton is a constitutional lawyer and author of the book Monarchy to Republic, Australian Republican Government. First, to you, Mr. Howard, what do you think of the ALP proposal?
Well, I'm not in favour of it. I would not presently favour changing Australia to a republic. My basic position is that we need in this country a ceremonial head of state. I believe in the Westminster system of government where you have a division between the head of state and the head of government. The present system has served us well. We are, for all practical purposes, an independent country. Some people say we are at present a crowned republic, and in some senses we have the best of both worlds. Those people who don't particularly care for the royal link don't find their daily lives invaded with it. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, there are millions of Australians who hold the association very dear, and whilst others will disagree with them, what the Labor Party is now embarking upon is a 10-year period of division and the development of enmity and bitterness in the community over an issue which, if it were left alone, would in the fullness of time solve itself in a non-divisive manner.
Mm-hmm. George Winterton, what do you have to say on this?
Well, picking up Mr. Howard's point about the Westminster system of government, that needn't, of course, change under a republic, and most republics of Western Europe do adopt the parliamentary form of executive, which I presume we would retain. Insofar as the ALP is suggesting a public education program, that, of course, is desirable, that people should be informed what the options are and think about the issues. But, of course, it will need a constitutional amendment to become a republic, and unless all the major parties are agreed, which appears not to be the case, it's not really on the cards.
Do you think that this is really an issue of great importance to the average Australian?
No, I don't think it is. But on the other hand, it has some importance of a psychological and symbolic nature. After all, the headship of state is a psychological and symbolic matter. And it's a matter that Australians should be thinking about. And if it's true, as Mr. Howard suggested, that ultimately we will become a republic, the point is we won't ultimately ever become a republic unless we adopt a constitutional amendment to achieve that. So at some point, we do have to actually, in a sense, bite the bullet and have an amendment.
Let's not kid ourselves. When the Labor Party talks about public education campaign, they have in mind spending the taxpayers' money advocating the Republican cause. They won't be spending any taxpayers' money advocating the status quo. They won't be giving equal time to the present situation, and I really do violently object, and I'm sure many people in my party and elsewhere will object to the concept that you use taxpayers' money to advocate a partisan political cause. My basic view is that the present system, when you cast around the world, it is about as good as you can find, and to that extent my conservative instincts are to ask why change something that has served this country remarkably well and has given us one of the longest continuous democracies in the world. Most of the continuous democracies in the world are constitutional monarchies, with the exception of the United States. So we shouldn't be indulge too much in self-flagellation about the system that we've had for so long.
So, George Winterton, why should we change?
I'm not saying it's an urgent matter, but the points Mr. Howard mentions are, of course, correct, and the system has served us well. But the point, I think, is that if we adopted a parliamentary republic, all the essentials of the present system that he's referring to would remain unchanged. But it may well be that the Labor Party has gone about it in the wrong way, and the fact that Mr. Howard, a moderate Liberal, is taking this view suggests to me that bipartisanship is out of the question. and therefore a constitutional amendment won't succeed. It would have been better, I think, if the government had approached the other parties and put forward a public education campaign, in a sense, not a partisan propaganda exercise, which is perhaps the way it's being made to look, because it's been decided at a party political conference and the opposition is opposed to it. So they haven't really gone about it the right way.
Mr. Howard, the basic rationale for the Schott-Dawkins ALP conference motion was, as they explained it, that while Britain's future lies in the EC, Australia's destiny and identity are tied to the Asia-Pacific region. What do you say to that?
Well, I think that's only partly true. The kind of world we're living in now is, to use that old cliche, it's more shrunk than ever before. Sure, we have a trading destiny in Southeast Asia, but we can never, ever deny the fact that we have essentially European roots, and the idea that this country would ever regard itself as having no association of significance with Europe, which is the fountainhead of our culture, our language, the practice of much of our religion, and the philosophical underpinnings of our society. I say that with, the greatest of respect to the association we must have with our part of the world. That is that Dawkins Schott rationale is the sort of simplistic, faddish description of Australia's destiny, which ignores the fact that the world is changing very rapidly. I mean, we don't have a Cold War anymore, and we are, in a sense, far more of a global show now, strategically and philosophically, than we've been at any time since the end of World War II. So I wouldn't be too quick to compartmentalise the world in 1991.
George Winterton, the last word.
I think that the fact that Britain has joined the European community is really a red herring. The fact of the matter is that our head of state lives thousands of miles away in another country, and Republicans, I think, believe that we need an indigenous head of state living here. Whether Britain joined the European community or not is really beside the point. The links Mr. Howard mentions with Europe, of course, are going to be there. We will remain presumably a member of the Commonwealth. The Queen will remain as head of the Commonwealth. I don't think this would in any way cut those links, and I agree with him on those. They're cultural, their language, they're there in terms of arts and education. I don't think this would change that.
George Winterton, John Howard, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Well, from possible future to virtual reality. In Britain, computers can now make fantasies come true, and that means big money for the entertainment industry. Tony Jones filed this report.
I seem to have entered some very strange cartoon landscape. In front of me I can see odd-shaped geometrical trees with little blue shadows. I'm in a room with no walls. Wait a minute, there is a wall. There's a wall with a painting on it. 2 palm trees and the sun and the sea and sand. And looking down I can see a checkered floor, blue and white checkered floor. And there's a table just in front of me. Let's see if I can... There's my hand, it's just appeared in front of me. I'm looking at my own hand, a computer-generated hand, inside this room, this computer-generated room.
It's like pulling aside a curtain and entering a new world. A crude and cartoon-like place now, but the technology is moving with remarkable speed. Each year, this other world will become more realistic, and many people will spend a great deal of time in it.
Finger in that direction, I'll move there. In fact, I appear to be going up. I appear to be flying above this beach. Let me turn around.
It's likely that some will even find this virtual reality preferable to the real world.
I point up in the air, I seem to fly above the room, and now I'm looking down upon the room, which is diminishing below me. If I point my hand back down, I can see it again, and my feet, and I'm floating down to the floor. And now I'm back in the computer-generated room. This is quite astonishing. I've never experienced anything like this.
Behind the eye shield, I was already getting a local anesthetic. Then the connection snaked under my eyelids.
The place you go is known as cyberspace, a science fiction term coined by the writers who've been predicting this sort of thing for years.
Cyberspace, a consensual hallucination experienced daily by billions of legitimate operators in every nation a graphic representation of data abstracted from the banks of every computer in the human system. Unthinkable complexity.
It's a pioneering breakthrough
entertainment
in
of the
the worlds
future.
research, design, and simulation.
Historic landmarks. Is it available?
It's already in production.
A British company, W Industries, has made the first commercially available virtual reality machines. Their first application, an obvious money spinner, is as arcade games.
Sometimes I refer to our products as a kind of Model T4. Very robust, extremely usable, and they just demonstrate some of the basic principles of VR and certainly give you the tremendous sensation of immersion in the virtual reality environment. But in terms of the engineering, it has a long, long way to go, and the goal, the dreams that we have are for the technology to finally end up as a pair of discrete glasses and a couple of Walkman earphones. Fine, how's it going? Just finishing off?
Yeah, just got the last finishing.
Okay.
Dr. Jonathan Walden is 31 years old. After 10 years of research, he's taken his small and remarkably young team into private industry.
Yeah, it's fine. Just checking this level.
Right.
Yeah, right.
They've pulled the rug from under huge multinationals by producing something that's akin to the first television sets.
How's it all coming on? Fine. Okay.
Indeed, Walden, who's something of a visionary, thinks virtual reality will one day take over from television.
I envisage the power of the medium being that it does submerge people and give people that much better an experience, if you like, than a passive screen. I do envisage it possibly taking over from that sort of medium.
That'll happen when the computer images reach this sort of level. But this world took months of computer time to generate. In virtual reality, for the visitor to interact with these sort of images, they must be generated in real time. Today's computers simply aren't powerful enough to do that, but some say they will be a few years from now.
I would say to you, in my short career, my short lifetime, I'm seeing predictions and performance levels which are far in excess of anything I imagined. And certainly some of the new technologies in terms of how to get chips and electronics to work that much faster, more processing speed means more resolution and more contours and everything to the graphics imagery that we're seeing. Moments very crude, the curve is going up.
But there is tremendous potential with today's cruder technology. Soon people, even in different countries, will be able to meet each other in cyberspace.
What we're going to do here is we're going to put a touch glove on. Now this actually, if you slide your hand in there, will allow you to not only walk around the virtual world using little hand gestures such as pointing your index finger to walk around, but it will also allow you to interact and feel the objects in the virtual world.
Walden employee Chris Udall had kitted me up for a meeting in cyberspace, but it was still a surprise when I saw him there.
Hi, Tony. Hi, is that you, Chris?
Yeah, it is. Just going to give you a quick wave.
How are you?
Fine.
Good to see you.
Why don't you walk over here and we'll have a shake of hands, yeah?
Yeah, okay. Where's your hand? Good God, I can feel your hand. I can feel it. That's amazing. Let me try this again. Let's shake hands. Chris? Oh, I'm shaking hands with an animated figure in virtual reality. How are you? Nice to meet you.
Thanks.
Now tell me, isn't this going to become addictive? Don't you think that generations of young people are going to end up doing this all day instead of real life?
Well, I think there's an element of seeking escape in everybody, and in what we're doing here, we're looking to provide that for people in one of the sort of safest, most pleasant environments possible. And I think if you exercise a bit of self-restraint, then you can avoid it becoming addictive. Why don't you come and join me on the other side of the wall, Tony? I'm just going to
on the other side of the
over
wall?
here. Yeah. Come and walk through the wall with me.
And Chris has just walked straight through the wall I think I'll go and join him. I'll go this way. I didn't quite make it, Chris. I seem to have exploded.
Tony Jones reporting. And that ends this edition of the 7:30 Report, a special one because of industrial action by members of the Public Sector Union. I'm Edward Grieve. Good night.